Have you ever felt the weight of something you couldn't explain? A truth that pressed against your chest, too vast for words. Most people spend their lives behind filters that soften reality. They don't truly see, they perceive through comfort, through stories that protect them from the unbearable sharpness of what is. But once those filters dissolve, once you glimpse reality without anesthesia, something irreversible happens. You begin to see everything differently. You can't go back. Carl. Jung warned that enlightenment is not about imagining light, but about making darkness conscious. Yet when you make too much of it conscious at once, the light burns instead of warms. Awareness becomes gravity. You start noticing the machinery behind every human mask, the patterns, the conditioning, the silent suffering we disguise as purpose. You realize that most of what we call normal life is a shared illusion built to defend us from seeing too much. The moment you step beyond it, reality stops being gentle. You feel the world's pain like static in your bones. Every smile, every conflict, every routine reveals something hidden beneath it. You begin to perceive the invisible, not mystically but existentially. You see how fragile meaning really is, how thin the veil between sanity and despair can be. And still, you can't turn away. This is the cost of vision, to carry the weight of seeing. Those who awaken often appear detached, but it's not arrogance, it's survival. They walk carefully between lucidity and collapse, learning to breathe inside a truth that few can bear. The eyes that open too wide must learn to stay kind, or they will shatter. So if you've ever felt that strange heaviness, that silent knowing that you've seen too much, you're not broken, you're evolving. Leave a comment if this speaks to something inside you. Like this video, subscribe, and stay with me, because together we'll explore why awakening, while sacred, is never safe. When the illusion finally cracks, it doesn't break with noise, and it breaks with silence. One day the familiar loses its shape. The routines, the ambitions, the definitions of meaning that once held you together begin to dissolve. You don't plan it, it just happens. The movie stops and you see the screen for what it is. The people around you are still acting, still playing their roles, but you've stepped outside the script. What you used to call life now feels strangely artificial. This is the shock of the real. The disorienting moment when consciousness expands faster than the psyche can stabilize. Jung understood this as a dangerous crossing, where the ego trembles under the weight of what the soul reveals. Because reality, in its raw form, is not beautiful at first. It's overwhelming. It exposes every lie we told ourselves to survive. The masks fall, the justifications crumble, and what remains is unbearable honesty. You start to see how fragile identity is, how much of you was built to be acceptable. Every value you inherited begins to flicker under scrutiny. The world you trusted reveals its fractures, moral systems driven by fear, relationships sustained by convenience, success defined by comparison. You feel like you've swallowed too much light too quickly. Many confuse this collapse with depression, but it's not sickness, it's sight. The shock comes because we were raised to believe that seeing clearly should feel good, but true vision destabilizes before it heals. It shatters before it rebuilds. You are not breaking down, you are breaking open. In time, the chaos will soften, but first, you must learn to breathe in the rawness of being, without the comforting illusions that once protected you. Few endure this phase, because few are willing to lose their dream of control. Yet this disorientation is sacred. It means you're meeting reality unfiltered, naked and alive for the first time. Every revelation carries a hidden danger. We imagine enlightenment as ascent, a golden expansion into clarity, but Jung knew better. He warned that too much consciousness too soon can break a mind that isn't ready to contain it. Because awareness is not gentle, it exposes. It floods the psyche with truths the ego cannot yet translate into meaning. When light comes faster than integration, the psyche fractures, not from darkness, but from brightness. You begin to see everything, patterns, motives, falseness, and it becomes unbearable. Every human gesture, reveals its shadow. Every system shows its hypocrisy. The world becomes transparent, and yet that transparency feels suffocating. What used to anchor you, belief, identity, faith, now dissolves into abstraction. You can't unsee, but you also can't yet understand. That is the paradox of awakening, perception without grounding. In that state, the mind swings between ecstasy and despair. You touch the infinite one moment, and the void the next. The ego, stripped of its illusions, fights to survive. It calls the light madness, because madness is easier to grasp than truth. Jung experienced this himself during his confrontation with the unconscious. He saw visions that nearly tore his reason apart, yet through that descent he discovered what he later called individuation, the art of expanding consciousness without disintegration. Light must descend slowly. Each truth must be digested, not devoured. To awaken is not to rush toward illumination, but to learn how to bear it, how to widen the container of the self, so the psyche can hold both shadow and radiance. That's why spiritual maturity is less about seeing more and more about surviving what you see. So if you felt yourself overwhelmed by awareness, dizzy from understanding too deeply, know that it's not failure. It's the psyche reorganizing itself around a new gravity. Even light can destroy when it arrives unfiltered. Integration is learning how to let it shine without letting it blind. There is a silence that follows awakening, not peace but distance. You try to speak, but language collapses. You try to share what you've seen, but the words sound strange, almost offensive to those who still sleep. You realize that most people don't want truth. They want reassurance. They want the dream to continue. And so you begin to withdraw, not out of superiority, but out of mercy. You stop forcing sight on those who aren't ready to open their eyes. Carl Jung once said that the deeper a person descends into self-knowledge, the lonelier the road becomes. It's not that others disappear, it's that resonance does. You still love them, still laugh, still exist among them, but something invisible separates you. Their world revolves around comfort. Yours now revolves around coherence. They talk about happiness, you talk about meaning. They seek distraction, you seek truth. The wavelengths no longer meet. You start to see the tragedy of communication, that the language of the awakened cannot be heard by the unready. And so you carry the burden silently. You learn to smile in crowds, to nod during small talk, to play your part in the social theater without believing the play is real. The loneliness deepens, but so does your compassion, because you remember when you too were asleep. This solitude is sacred. It's the womb of transformation. In the absence of external validation, you begin to build an inner friendship, a companionship with the self that can't be faked or lost. The silence that once felt punishing becomes a sanctuary. You stop needing to be understood and begin to find strength in simply being. So tell me, have you ever looked around and realized that you no longer fit where you once belonged? That your clarity has cost you connection? Leave your reflection in the comments, because while awakening isolates, it also unites us in a deeper way, among those few who can endure the truth and still choose love. There is a moment in every deep awakening when you begin to wonder if you've gone too far. Reality stretches, familiar meanings collapse, and the ground that once felt solid starts to tremble beneath you. You're not hallucinating, you're seeing. But the more you see, the less sense the world seems to make. That's when the mind starts whispering, have I lost my sanity? Or have I finally found it? Carl Jung understood this danger better than anyone. He knew that the same door that opens to illumination also opens to disintegration. When consciousness expands too quickly, it breaks through the fragile structures that once protected the psyche. The myths, the ego, the logic of daily life, all are dissolved in the flood of new awareness. What remains is raw psyche, chaotic and immense, and without grounding it can devour the self. Truth and madness share a border, and it's thinner than most imagine. The mystic and the psychotic both touch the unknown, but one returns with insight, while the other is consumed by it. The difference is not vision but integration. Jung wrote that, "The fool is one who is possessed by the contents of the unconscious. The sage is one who possesses them." To see the truth is not enough. You must learn to carry it without being carried away. When the mind faces something it can't comprehend, it fractures to survive. That's why those who access too much reality too soon often fall into despair. They've crossed into realms that language cannot hold, and so they appear lost. But what looks like madness is sometimes just the soul learning to rebuild itself after seeing too deeply. So if your clarity once scared you, if you felt the vertigo of perception, breathe. You're walking the same edge Jung walked, the same threshold between revelation and ruin. Don't rush to define it. Stay grounded, stay gentle, stay human. Because truth without compassion can shatter, but truth carried with love heals. When the soul begins to awaken, the body feels it first. Awareness may rise through the mind, but it lands in flesh. Suddenly exhaustion has no explanation. Your chest feels heavy for no clear reason, and your sleep becomes strange, half dream, half vision. This is not sickness, it's transformation. The body is trying to keep up with the soul that has outgrown its old rhythm. Carl Jung believed that the psyche and the body are mirrors, two halves of the same living mystery. What consciousness refuses, the body speaks. When truth pierces too deep, it doesn't just expand the mind, it shakes the nervous system, rearranges the breath, alters the pulse. Enlightenment, when unbalanced, can feel like fever. Too much energy, too much awareness, too much reality coursing through a vessel still shaped by old fears. You begin to realize how much tension your body carried just to remain asleep. Muscles conditioned to armor your emotions, breath shortened by years of pretending you were fine. When awakening comes, those defenses collapse and the body releases what it's held. Grief, anger, terror, ancient memories. The pain isn't new, it's just finally being allowed to move. This is why many seekers mistake awakening for illness. They think they're falling apart, but they're actually integrating. The soul is rewriting the body's story, cell by cell. You might cry without knowing why, shake without reason, crave silence or solitude. It's all part of the recalibration. The body is learning to vibrate at the frequency of truth. Treat it gently, eat slowly, rest deeply, walk barefoot, on the earth. Let nature remind your nervous system that you belong to something larger than thought. Because awakening is not an escape from the human experience, it's a descent into it. The light that touches the soul must also bless the skin. In time, the body stops resisting and starts remembering. It becomes a vessel, not a cage, an instrument that can finally play the music the soul has been hearing all along. The higher you rise in consciousness, the more essential it becomes to stay rooted. Every spiritual ascent demands an equal descent into the body, into the earth, into the ordinary rhythm of living. Without grounding, awakening becomes instability. You begin to float between dimensions, too awake for the illusions of the world, but too fragile to sustain the truth that replaced them. Jung understood this balance well. He said that the tree that reaches heaven must have roots that touch hell. When you access realities beyond the collective illusion, your old structures of safety dissolve. You see too much, the hidden motives, the unconscious drives, the architecture of human suffering, and without grounding, empathy turns to exhaustion. The awakened mind expands infinitely, but the human vessel remains finite. You must anchor the light or it will burn through you. Grounding is not regression, it's wisdom. It means remembering that awakening doesn't exempt you from life, it deepens your participation in it. Cook your meals. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Let the mundane save you from the weight of transcendence. The simplest acts, breathing slowly, touching the soil, listening to rain, become sacred rituals of balance. Many seekers reject the world after touching truth, but real enlightenment integrates it. It's not about escaping the dream, it's about walking through it consciously. You are not here to abandon humanity, but to embody it differently, to bring heaven into matter, to let awareness move through hands and heartbeat. When the Vision feels heavy, return to presence. When clarity overwhelms you, touch something real, might water, wood, skin. These are not distractions, they are bridges. The divine does not need worship, it needs embodiment. So tell me, how do you stay anchored when the light becomes too much? Share your rituals in the comments, because every soul that learns to stand steady in truth strengthens the ground for those who are just beginning to wake. At a certain point, awakening softens. After the fire, after the shock, after the loneliness, compassion begins to rise quietly like dawn. You stop trying to wake others up. You stop measuring your worth by how much they understand you. The pain of their blindness transforms into tenderness because you remember what it felt like to live in that dream. The comfort, the innocence, the necessary ignorance that protects the psyche until it's ready. You no longer see the sleepers as enemies. You see them as reflections of your former self. Carl Jung wrote that no one becomes enlightened by fighting darkness, but by making peace with it. And part of that peace is realizing that every soul wakes at its own pace. The collective illusion is not a prison, it's a cocoon. What looks like stagnation from the outside is often sacred preparation within. The very people who frustrate you now may one day walk the same path you're on, and when they do, they'll remember your silence, your patience, your love. You begin to carry truth differently, not as a sword to cut through others, but as a lantern that quietly illuminates. Your presence, not your preaching, becomes the message. You start listening more, judging less. You understand that the awakened state is not superiority, it's responsibility, to embody clarity without arrogance, to see delusion without contempt. This is the hidden grace of awakening, compassion without condescension. You can look at the chaos of the world and no longer feel despair because you sense the intelligence behind it, the slow unfolding of consciousness, the divine rhythm in every confusion. You no longer need to change people, you need only to remain true. Your calm becomes contagious, your stillness becomes instruction. The most powerful teaching is quiet presence, a living reminder that truth doesn't demand belief. It reveals itself in those ready to see. After the intensity of awakening, after the endless search for meaning, there comes a quiet revelation. Not everything must be understood. The mind, so eager to dissect the infinite, finally admits its limits. The truth is too vast to be held. It can only be lived. And in that surrender, something extraordinary happens. Peace replaces certainty. You stop needing answers and start trusting the silence between them. Carl Jung often warned that the modern mind suffers not from lack of knowledge, but from lack of mystery. We have filled our lives with data, explanations, theories, yet the soul starves. Awakening restores that sacred ignorance, the humility of realizing that existence cannot be solved like a problem. The deeper your consciousness expands, the more you sense that reality is not meant to be conquered, but contemplated. You begin to see mystery everywhere, in the timing of coincidences, in the rhythm of loss and renewal, in the way suffering sometimes gives birth to wisdom. You no longer demand that life be fair or simple. You recognize that the same force that destroys also creates, and that love itself is a paradox. Both agony and grace, chaos and order, shadow and light intertwined. Accepting mystery is not resignation, it's intimacy. You stop standing outside of life, trying to analyze it, and begin to participate in its unfolding. You allow uncertainty to become a teacher. You learn to say, I don't know, not as defeat, but as reverence, because not knowing is the doorway through which awe enters. When the mind bows to the unknown, the heart begins to hear again. The silence you once feared becomes sacred space, not empty but full of presence. And from that space, compassion deepens, creativity awakens, and wisdom flows without effort. To live awakened is not to possess truth, but to be possessed by wonder. You are no longer searching for meaning, you are becoming it. When you finally touch reality, not the filtered, convenient version, but the raw pulse beneath everything, something in you dies, and something eternal takes its place. The illusions that once gave you comfort no longer satisfy. You can't return to distraction or pretend that meaning can be found in imitation. You've seen too much, felt too deeply. The dream has ended, and the truth, heavy, luminous, and alive, has taken its place. Carl Jung said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And when you do, the world transforms. Not because it changes, but because you do. You start seeing through appearances, not cynically, but clearly. You feel pain without fleeing, love without ownership, loss without despair. You move through life aware that every encounter, every joy, every heartbreak is sacred because it is real. Touching reality strips away the false layers of spirituality that promise escape. You realize that awakening isn't transcendence, it's embodiment. It's living in truth even when truth hurts. It's walking among the asleep without judging them. It's carrying light, not as decoration, but as responsibility. You know. Longer seek to rise above the world. You begin to serve it with open eyes. The impact of touching the real is subtle yet absolute. Life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that flows through you. Every breath feels like participation in a mystery too vast to grasp, but too beautiful to deny. You no longer need to understand everything to feel at peace. You simply belong. And if you've walked through these 10 thresholds with me, through darkness, silence, solitude, and awe, then you've already touched that truth within yourself. Tell me, what part of this journey stayed with you the most? Leave your reflection in the comments. Like this video, share it with someone ready to see beyond illusion, and subscribe for the next descent into depth. Because awakening is not a moment. It's a lifetime of learning how to stay human after seeing what most cannot bear to see.